Okay, take two. Thank you all for bearing with us. As always, we're constantly adapting, having to roll with the punches. I'm gonna vamp for a sec. Can people let me know if it's working or not in the comments? Because let me tell you, I had some really golden nuggets of wisdom and reflection and heartfelt, insight. And I don't want to waste that again. I'm just kidding. But, I don't want to frustrate our loyal audience any more than we already have. So, can anyone verify that they can hear this in the comments? Or testing, 1, 2, 3. We are just waiting to see if everything is working. Okay, we have confirmation that it's working. Okay, we're back. Thank you, everyone. This is the perfect example of how we cannot do what we do without all of you. We are a community. It takes all of us to make this work. And, every little bit counts. Thank you for being here and for tuning in and your patience and your continued support and believing in us. Like I said before, I really spilled my heart to you all earlier, but none of you got to hear it. But, I'm going to keep it short because we have a lot of other important stuff that I would love all of you to get to experience. Everything is really crazy these days, and it has been for a while. And as we've been adapting to figure out how we can take some time to celebrate the 20th anniversary, and really slow down for a second and look back, we decided we're going to do a live stream, and in that process interviewed or sat down with, recorded, just touched base with a lot of people who've been involved in the Social Justice Center's history or currently involved. And in that process, I was just blown away by how much has happened here, how much people care about this community, and how many amazing people have been a part of making this place reach this day, and how many lives this shared experiment that is the Social Justice Center, how many lives it's touched. And so we decided, instead of, a live stream, we have, in just the handful of people who were interested in sharing, that we were able to sit down with before the live stream, we have hours of footage that I was like, this is amazing. This is an incredible story, a shared story. So we're making a documentary, if you can call it a documentary when it's nonprofit workers taking video on their phones. But we're going to have a film. So today, I just put together some of sort of a sneak peek. Think of it as like you're the VIP audience at the Cannes Film Festival who gets a sneak peek, a first look at what's to come. And this is part of, an entire campaign that's going to go through the end of the year. Because, like I said, in this process, I really feel like it's been a journey of sort of learning and meeting people that, I only joined this community a few years ago. And I really feel like so honored and fortunate to be able to have connected and made so many friends and comrades. And so we're going to have throughout the rest of the year a gallery exhibit. We're going to be debuting the full version of this film. Lots of content on our website and social media about the great connections and stories that there is to tell about this place. So our goal is to raise $20,000 for 20 years. If we raise it, I promise that the next live stream will figure out sooner that I'm talking to myself. But you'll see in the video some of the things that people have said over the years, in the ways that this is typical SJC. We're always just like adapting, fumbling through it, growing, learning, and doing great stuff despite all the craziness. And so it's all very rough. I crammed as much into this as I thought people could take it in one sitting. And there's no captions, it is just clips. And so if you want to, in the comments, be like, I know who that is. I know who it is. You probably do too. But, I really want to thank everyone who was a part of this so far. And I'll say more about that at the end. But also, I want to invite all of you to share your memories, stories, any photos, any brochures, any emails, anything you want to associated with either the Willie Street Co-op, which was here first, or the Social Justice Center over the last 20 years, including if you want to send in something on your phone, if you want to meet with me and be a part of the video. There wasn't time to talk to everyone who has great stories to tell, but I would love to connect and add your voice to this story. Before we go any further, though, I really need to thank all of our supporters over the years, everyone who's donated, and our sponsors for this campaign. The Willie Street Co-op, very fitting, we're so grateful. Solidarity Realty, Darcy was involved in the SJC for a while and is just across the street. And Bachman Construction, that has been a part of every major renovation. I'm like getting teary-eyed thinking about sponsors, but I feel really grateful that we have such an awesome community. And if you want to be a sponsor, you still can. There's still lots of great opportunities. And feel free to share all of this stuff. Donate. There's like 100 ways. Just kidding. There's 4 or something. On Facebook, on Instagram, click those buttons and you can text, or you could go to the link in the description. Again, the campaign lasts for the rest of the year. And so, yeah, we're off to a great start of super behind schedule, but I think it's all worth it. And so, yeah, I'm gonna, without any further ado, some really awesome people who did a lot of awesome stuff and were willing to tell me about it. Enjoy!
So in 1995, Nan Cheney had an idea, which was to create a cooperative building for social justice organizations. And 3 of the organizations she was working with were Wisconsin Community Fund, Tenant Resource Center, and Citizen Action of Wisconsin. We were all in the State Street Center building on State Street. And I think the first group that we brought in was the Tenant Resource Center and Brenda Conkle.
I remember being asked by Steve from Wisconsin Community Foundation, Steve Starkey, to come to a meeting with a woman named Nan Cheney because she had this idea that she wanted to create a social justice center. She thought that the left or, organizations that were working on progressive type issues needed a place to be in a building together, to be able to share resources, to be able to share skills, to be able to share, basically community, right? To build a community where nonprofits that were working on similar issues, but not all the same, would come together and work and, save some money, but also just have a community where we could thrive together.
She had that idea, but we couldn't find a building that was the right size and was a reasonable price and was kind of like in a good neighborhood. But she kept that idea in the back of her mind and kept looking.
And so Steve invited us to this meeting, and Nan had, I forget there was a different building she wanted to initially buy. And she had a whole lot of thoughts about, this idea, and a lot of people, I don't even remember who was all in that initial meeting, but not everybody decided it was a good idea. But I kept coming back to the meetings to see what idea she had next.
I think it was maybe July or August of 1999. Willie Street Co-op decided to move from their old building across the street to their new headquarters, where they still are located. And so that old grocery store building was available.
Eventually, she came across the idea to buy the old Willie Street Co-op.
She decided it was the right size, it was the right location, was in a progressive neighborhood and it had been kind of a center for people to gather. And so she said, this is it, this is the building that we need to do. The problem was that we didn't really have any organization. We didn't have any money. It was just an idea. And she went out on a limb and made an offer. She was on the grant committee for Wisconsin Community Fund, and I was the executive director. And she convinced me to kind of jump into this project with her. And so we made an offer on the building. And we thought, well, it's not going to go anywhere. But we thought if we don't make an offer on the building, somebody else is going to snap it up, and then we won't, we'll be looking and looking again. And so, to our surprise, the Willie Street Co-op said, yes, we'll accept your offer. And so we said, but we don't have any money, we don't have an organization, we don't have a structure, whatever. And they said, we'll wait. And so we started organizing, and it was difficult because it was such a big project, and we were starting from scratch. But people were really excited about the project and realized that there was a lot of potential for it. We started talking to the Dane Fund, which is now Forward Community Investments, and they were very new. They were a very young organization at that time. And we met with them several times, and they would say, this is a great idea, but you don't have your ducks in a row, which meant we really didn't have a business plan. We didn't have, like a mission statement or even an organization. So one thing that was recommended is that we create a separate nonprofit entity, the Social Justice Center, to own the building. But we still didn't have what it took to get a loan on the building and to be able to close on it. And so we would have these weekly meetings at the State Street Center, and sometimes we would have great success. And it was like, oh, things are moving forward, and we got a donation, or something happened with the project, and we'd be all excited. And the next week we would have what Nan called a Godzilla experience, which was like suddenly everything we had done was crushed by this big foot, But we kept on organizing and kept on saying, okay, that didn't work, so let's try something else.
The spring of 2001, I got involved. Nan Cheney, in some way, roped me into helping plan sort of one of the first fundraising events. And I began to then, I followed that up with kind of continuing to volunteer, helping, keep records, get contributions recorded properly, that sort of thing. And that just, I did whatever was necessary at that point and continued to work with Nan.
We were fortunate to be able to purchase that building. But it was not without a lot of naysayers in the community. A lot of people said it couldn't be done, said it wasn't going to be profitable, that we weren't going to continue. Several, banks didn't, give us a loan. Developers weren't interested in helping us. But Nan, if anybody knew Nan Cheney, she did not take no for an answer. She was very determined to make this happen. And her and some of us kind of just kept working together. And every time somebody told us no, we took it as a challenge. And we decided that we were going to make this work. And 20 years later, it's a success.
Nan Cheney was the sort of organizer that you dream of. She was incredibly humble, incredibly generous. She made everybody feel like they were absolutely vital to the project. And yet at the end of the day, she did most of the work. And so you had this amazing person who everybody wanted to work with, everybody wanted to be around, because she modeled the approach that was going to work. And what that meant was she showed up early, she stayed late, she baked the cookies and, swept the room, but also delivered the best talk and, comforted somebody who was hurting and lifted up somebody who was inspired. She was just an amazing figure.
Nan would work in the office all day doing fundraising. And in the evening, she would go and do demolition work at the building. And she loved doing the demolition work. She thought that was great fun. Nan at the time was in her at least mid-70s. And so after a couple of months of doing that, she came into the office one Friday and she said, well, I have to go to the doctor. And I said, why? What's wrong? She said, I'm feeling a little run down. So I said to her, if you weren't feeling run down, then you would need to go see the doctor because you've been working like 18-hour days.
I think one of Nan's dreams was to bring everybody together in the Social Justice Center.
Nan Cheney was a great convener. She brought people together. And she was very, very good at getting, prominent folks to step up to support the Social Justice Center at a time when it was very new. And that gave a real boost because then you're like, wow, this is making connections. It's being paid attention to. The media is paying attention to it. Political leaders are paying attention to it. The governor is coming to events, things of that nature.
Because she loved this project and really wanted it to succeed and had a lot of connections, she did a ton of fundraising.
I don't think you can underestimate the role that she played, especially in the early stages. And what was wonderful about it was that Nan was radical. And so as a result, while she brought resources in, and while she brought political folks in, she never, ever suggested that the Social Justice Center should be anything less than intensely focused and intensely driven to achieve economic and social and racial justice, to save the planet, to work for peace in a world where there's so much militarism. She didn't need any recognition. She didn't need any award or any honor.
Obviously, we wouldn't even exist if it weren't for Nan Cheney. And so she was one of my favorite people in the world. I miss her dearly. She became a mentor to me and a good friend. And, it was just the building would not even exist without her. And I can't, thank her and her family enough.
And we had a group that began to form in the fall of 2001 to continue fundraising because there were always a lot of physical plant needs for the center.
We had, right away had some problems in terms of managing the building and the finances, and of course everything was new to us. We weren't used to owning a building and managing it.
It was an old building.
Right away we had leaking in MCC's space. We have a flat roof. which we did some repair to the roof during the construction. We didn't do enough repair.
The front of the building faces south, and in the summer got lots and lots of free heat.
Leaking in the basement.
Flooding in the basement.
Flooding problems with the basement. So I remember Brenda was down there like cleaning up flood waters. And I was like, well, I'm moving in. Like, I don't care if there's water, I need some other place to work other than my teeny tiny bedroom.
But we realized right away that there was a lot of synergy and a lot of, suddenly these groups that had been on different floors and not really working together at the State Street Center were really working kind of hand in hand, both to manage the building and to create, kind of a culture and be, become competent in doing the maintenance and management of the building, but also how could we work together? How could we, do cooperative projects that would really help all four of the agencies and help, the community in general. So, that was a really exciting period. It was really challenging because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we were getting in for. So,
and we began meeting we had morning meetings. We began meeting at Lazy Jane's, which was a real plus because we all got addicted to Lazy Jane's scones. So we always came to the meetings. And we had a great time talking. We didn't only talk about the center, but talking through things that needed to be done at the center.
And it was also really exciting to go to those meetings and go, okay, we've got this big mountain we got to climb, and let's figure out how to climb it.
I mean, we always wanted to make sure that we were self-governed, that the people who are in the building are the ones making the decisions for the building, and that all of the principles of working together as community have really held up throughout the years. To some extent, it was an experiment. There were a few other sort of collaboratives that have happened throughout Madison with various buildings. And we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a building. We wanted to make sure that it was a center, a community center, and a place where people gathered. And so it has certainly become that.
I think the concept from the beginning, particularly the incubator concept of the idea that we would provide space for fledgling organizations. Nan used to describe it as the next level from the kitchen table. So when you get an idea and you start working out of your home on something, but you want to get a little bit more organized and formal, and the incubator was meant to help that, to be that place, and to provide a place for people to give information, to share information about how to organize, how to fundraise, areas that might need attention, that sort of thing. And I was very intrigued by that. I lived not very far from the center, and I thought it was a real asset to the community.
I think one of our biggest values have been the organizations that have been in the incubator downstairs, the ones that were able to grow and really thrive with just a little bit of extra help and a little bit of space to be able to do their work.
We started out at the SJC in the downstairs incubator space and moved upstairs this summer when a larger office became available. We're proud to share office space with two Madison worker cooperatives, Common Good Bookkeeping Cooperative and the Interpreters Cooperative of Madison. We appreciate being in a space full of other organizations working towards a more just economy and having access to shared resources that we would not be able to have on our own.
We had very different groups that were downstairs and with different needs at different points, and different groups that were upstairs. And so, in just getting to know each other, you got to know, oh, I have a question about this. I bet you this person could help me, and that worked really well. It was just a really great space to be there in the incubator. I mean, there was a lot of camaraderie among the other incubator folks. The benefit for the organization that I was associated with at SJC, which was the East Timor Action Network, I think was just the connections to the different groups of the building, as well as the very reasonable office rent. And there was more materially, there was access to shared printer copier down there. And, but I think more than anything, it was that community, building that community across a pretty big number of groups, because there were the forming groups upstairs, and there had to be, of course, groups downstairs kind of came and left more frequently, but at most times there was at least 4, 6, maybe more groups that were downstairs. And and then people were having meetings in the building, and so it was, you always just got the sense of, and I would say it's even more so now, to be honest, minus the pandemic, but this sense of a lot of good things going on, and just your ability to drop in at any point, and then some like wonderful discussion or training or demonstration or something would be going on. And it was just that it was rooted in community. The groups really worked together, and it was very much a grassroots effort that was, a little challenging at points to raise the funds to get the building. So it was this big landmark to get there. It wasn't an easy effort. And then I do feel like the groups that have been a part of the space have really made the best of it, from the beginning to today, just in terms of, we're not just going to close our office doors and, work on whatever spreadsheets we have to work on, but really building that sense of community across groups, which unfortunately, a lot of times doesn't tend to happen.
We're the Madison Mutual Aid Network Cooperative. We live here at the Mutual Aid Workspace in the Social Justice Center, and we're a type of networked cooperative designed to create means for everyone to discover and succeed in work they want to do with the support of their community.
One of the things that we were really proud of in the beginning is that we wanted to really be sort of an example. We had used a lot of building materials that were recycled. We made sure that we had rain gardens. We were trying to be an example for the community. And one of the cool things over time is that we continued to do that with the pantry that's outside now, with some of the revised work that's been doing in the gardens. We continue to in that same vein. And so I'm really proud of us to continue some of those initial goals that we had wanted to do. Some of the things that have changed is obviously we did some renovations. It certainly looks different than it did before. We've had a lot of organizations come and go. We've had some organizations that started in the lower level that have grown into, $1 million organizations. We've had some organizations who have been with us the whole time who have sort of stayed about the same size. And some organizations have just used it as a starting off point. It really was, instead of working at your kitchen table, you could come into the Social Justice Center, use the copier and really get some resources that could be shared to be able to help organizations grow. So I think that's probably some of the things that I've seen over time is it's exciting to see some of those organizations really take off. And we played important roles for various organizations who had been in, maybe some precarious situations over time. And it helped organizations to stabilize. It helped organizations to figure out what their next steps were. There's been so many meetings in that community room. If those walls could talk, I'm sure there'd be a lot of Madison history happened right there in that conference room.
Jackie Mccauley, I first knew Jackie Mccauley as another wife of the law school faculty. My husband was on the faculty. Jackie's husband, Stuart, was on the faculty. But she was a force unto herself. She was one of these people who had the ability to draw people to her. She always had interesting things going on in her life, and she told the most marvelous stories about what was happening. And during the time I knew her, she originally had gotten, I think, a degree in psychology or social psychology, but later decided to deal with the issues that she needed to deal with. She needed a law degree. So in the 1980s, she went back to school, to the law school. Her focus was always on social justice. And she felt that as a lawyer, she could have a greater impact. She and Stuart had a marvelous home on the west side. They entertained often with visiting faculty. People would come in to lecture, that sort of thing. And were very much an important part of making this community open and welcoming to a broad variety of people with different ideas and interests. It was after her passing. She died in 2000. Nan Cheney knew Stuart. She was the one who reached out to Stuart and began to talk to him about ways in which he might be involved in the center. And that's when they came up with the idea of the Jackie Mccauley Art Gallery. She and Stuart talked through what it might look like, and then we engaged in one of the easiest fundraising campaigns to provide the basics for the art gallery. Art, well, at least a certain kind of art, definitely has a social justice aspect, and the intent of the gallery was to let the community have a chance to see the work of artists who were focusing on social justice issues, or other artists who lacked a good venue for showing their work, whether because of race, ethnicity, ability, lack of connections in the community, whatever. But we thought we wanted to be a place where a lot of people would be able to show their work and become better known, and that their art would also inform what was happening at the center. And the conference room, of course, has always been open to other groups to use as appropriate. And so we figured this would allow the impact of the art to go far beyond the center. I think there are many ways we talk about social justice. Art is another mode of communication about social justice. It portrays people in need of social justice, people that are engaged in actions that result in social justice. It's a way, again, to communicate without words, and it has a meaning. People can drive by or walk by and see the art and think about what it means, which is very different from seeing a building with a name on it or a series of names. And it enlivens the community. It draws people to look at it and to think about it.
Also pretty proud of some of the things that we did, some of the first, the mural that we put on the side of the building, the driveway in the back that was painted with a big flower on it, the artists that contributed all that work, Sharon Kilfoy, Kelty, Shady, and other folks who put time and effort into making it be a beautiful space. We really can't thank them enough. And again, a lot of people just came together with their creative spirits and helped make the building a project that we can be proud of.
The mural. The mural kind of saved my life in some respects, because Terrell's only been dead since March of 2015, and it was a shock. And then we were all out in the streets, and I needed something positive. And Kelty had talked about making a mural, and Sharon had talked about doing, this was Shady, and I thought, yeah, I could help paint. I could come paint. And we fixed the walls and painted it all up, and my whole family was here. All my kids. I got pictures of us, I had so many kids who were not mine, but mine. They all call me grandma. We were all here painting and working and fixing it, making it look beautiful. And when it was done, it was amazing. You know, I know that there were some families that had a hard time with a positive image because their child died so horribly. But I would rather you remember my Relly like that than dead on the steps because a cop killed him without cause.
So when, Tony Robinson died and people used that for sort of the center of some of the protests, I often thought that Nan Cheney would have been so happy that the Social Justice Center got to be the base for where some people could meet and talk and get some respite from the street and do all of the things that they were doing.
We've had 3 different shows here every year for the last 6 years, and it's this year coming up at 7. It's not going to change. We stand out here March 6th. This is where we all come for the day he died. Sometimes it's hard to not say, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to think about his death. I want to think about his life. Coming and doing this was just as important. Coming and painting this was just as important. And you never stopped. You never said no. You've never said no to anything I've ever asked you for. Not that I've asked you for $1 million or anything, but you've always been there for my family. You've always been there. We need change, and it's the little things that count. It's who's going to do all the paperwork, and who's going to do a computer file because I don't know how to do it, and who's going to help me, build this for my grandson, and justice in this community, because I really feel that if we get some kind of resolve here, that we as a community can move on.
I often kind of wonder how many ideas for policies or changes that have happened in our community or laws that got passed started in the Social Justice Center. How many protests have been planned? How many rallies have been planned? How many phone calls have been made from the Social Justice Center? It kind of is mind blowing to think that over these 20 years or so that so much work has come out of the Social Justice Center that has created change within our community. Some of it worked and some of it didn't. We failed sometimes on some of the initiatives that people wanted to do, but just the sheer amount of energy that has gone into some of the work that came out of the Social Justice Center is pretty amazing to me. And a lot of people might not even realize it because, to some people it's just an office building and it was just a conference room. But I think that it is so much more than that. And again, by people being together, being able to talk with each other, being able to, just bounce ideas off each other. And sometimes they were good ideas and sometimes they were bad ideas. But, we were able to sort of work through things together. And I think that the community that it has formed around the Social Justice Center, I think has been really instrumental in a lot of changes that have happened here in Madison.
It was one of the most challenging things that I've done, partly because we were doing it by the seat of our pants, but also like one of the most rewarding, to start out with kind of nothing, and then a year and a half later end up with a building in a great neighborhood and with organizations that really had a lot in common and could really, have a great future there.
So it's not just a building, right? It's an opportunity, an ongoing kind of challenge, right? Of groups that come together to say, maybe we could do even more if we work together.
It's sort of nice to see it continuing to survive and to continue doing the things we thought it ought to do from the very beginning.
I'm very proud to have been, one of the founders of the building. It was an incredible experience to work with Nan. And, She left us a few years ago, but that was her legacy. I think she knew when she was doing that building, given her age, that she wasn't going to be around forever, and this was something that was going to, to carry on her vision for what she wanted to see happen in the Madison area. So I'm very proud to have been her kind of accomplice. I think that there's even more possibility to come in the future, but I think it's had the first 20 years have certainly been a big success, financially and organizationally for the program.
I'd like to make sure that the center itself is on firm ground financially, so that we don't have periodic points at which we're scrambling to make sure we have enough money to do what needs to be done just to keep the lights on, basically, in the center.
We're always constantly adding art, and we're trying to, add things that beautify the place. And so I look forward to some of those projects coming to fruition as well.
I'd like to see the Willie Street facing part get an uplift.
Eventually add that second story on the building. Or I hope that sometime, the Social Justice Center might consider having an SJC too, having another piece of property that can host more organizations.
Increasing our outreach so that more people know about the incubator space, that there is space that might be available for groups that need some place for a period of time, that sort of thing.
Have a lot of dreams that don't fit in our heads, so we got to share. Right now, the big one is greenhouses and solar panels.
I would like to use my skills, knowledge, and education to be a legal advocate for my community. I have a really big dream about using art as a way to connect community and services.
I've got a big dream about work and redesigning it for people who want to live in the community that they work in, doing what they want to do.
And I have a big dream about creating neighborhood peace building and restorative practice. We have other big dreams in our dream team about making a healthy food cart, about making a warming shelter, about buying a farm that's out of commission and creating urban gardens and housing for people who need it, and much more.
I am always amazed by the skills that are shared and the information that's shared in the walls of the Social Justice Center. And I would like to see us have more community events and more opportunities to share that information. Obviously, COVID has made that really super difficult, but I'm hoping that eventually we can get back to the point where we can do in-person meetings and we can do in-person gatherings, and it can become even more of a community center. I think sometimes people look at the building and think that it's just for the organizations that are inside there. I'd like to see our community room and the MAW, the mutual aid working space be used more, so that we can really bring the community inside.
I know that Nan, if she saw the Social Justice Center today, would say the same thing. There's always a rally, there's always a march, there's always an event, and we can start at the Social Justice Center and march on the Capitol.
And often, when people contribute to organizations, they really are focused on putting money into the mission to actually affect what's happening. The fact of the matter is, for organizations to exist and function properly, you need money for administration, for just the plain kinds of structure of where you are, the machines you need to use to make yourself efficient, that sort of thing. And it's the less glamorous part of any organization, but it still needs to happen. And the advantage of the Social Justice Center is that it tries to provide that kind of support that is less flashy or appealing, which enables the organizations to go on and to spend more of their resources, really, on actually doing the things that they're organized for.
But I think that the ideas and the programs that grow out of the Social Justice Center really do have a ripple effect throughout Madison. And I think that in supporting the building, in supporting the space for us to be creative and to do the work that we do, really helps to give people a home where they can really do that work and find a place in Madison that's gonna be interested in their ideas. So I think contributing to the Social Justice Center contributes to Madison as a whole.
I find it hard to believe it's 20 years.